Welcome to our session at the British Library Startup Day today, which is called How to Start a Business That Makes a Difference. If you're wondering why the British Library is running this program of events today, it's because they have something called Business and Intellectual Property Centre, or BIPC for short. And if you're thinking of starting any sort of business, you can get lots of free advice and support from them. So just Google British Library Business and Intellectual Property Centre. There's a national network of these up and down the country, from down in Devon to up in Glasgow. And today's session has come out of the Manchester BIPC, which is at Manchester Central Library. I'm here hosting because I work for an organisation called the Human Lending Library, which is part of the BIPC. If you're the leader of a social enterprise or charity, you can borrow a human from the Human Lending Library. And those 70 humans are our experts. They're all successful business people you can apply for mentoring from. They include the founders of successful businesses like Carphone Warehouse, Pret a Manger, and John Frieda, and you can Google Human Lending Library to find out more. So let's get into our session. When we say we're going to talk about businesses that make a difference, we're talking today about social enterprises. They are for-profit businesses that work to create positive social or environmental impact. Now, there are about 100,000 of these in the UK, and today we're going to introduce you to two of them. One of them focuses on social care and the other on education. Our speakers will make their presentations for about 10 minutes each, after which you will be able to ask questions. There is an ask a question button apparently on the screen that you're looking at. So please do put your questions in there, and we'll be taking those after about 20 minutes after our two speakers have finished. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Paula Branium, who is the Managing Director of Future Directions. Paula, please tell us all about Future Directions, but in particular, given that it's Startup Day, how you got started.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for having me here to speak. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who we are, what we did, a bit about our early days, where we're at now, and a couple of the key ingredients to success in terms of having a business that makes a difference. So, as was already said, I'm the Managing Director of Future Directions. We're a not-for-profit social enterprise. We support people with learning disabilities, mental health problems, all sorts of support needs across the whole of the North. That support is on a continuum. It ranges from a few hours of support a week into people's homes, through to very specialist complex support 24/7 in a variety of settings. And probably the most important thing for you to know about us, which I'm going to focus on later on, is that we are a values-based organisation, and we really believe that by living out our values, that's how we make a difference to people's lives. So if I just tell you a little bit about our startup, we came out of the NHS. We were set up originally as a subsidiary in 2012. It became quite clear that in order for us to achieve and make a difference, we were going to need to become completely independent. So in 2015, we cut off all ties with the NHS and we became completely independent as Future Directions CIC. The early days, like in all good adventure stories, were really grim. Every single contract we had was making a huge, massive loss because it was contracts that had been set up in the NHS with social care money, and the two things do not go well together. Because each contract was making a loss, we had a massive growing negative balance sheet that at one point was over £500,000. When we wanted to become independent, the price of our independence was to agree to pay back the parent company £1.6 million loan in terms of what they believed was fair for setup fees and support fees, etc. So early days, like I said, every contract making a loss, massive negative balance sheet, massive loan to pay back, and also we weren't known. People either saw us as new kid on the box, and we didn't have, like, even though we'd had years and years of experience, because we were set up new, we didn't have 3 years of accounts, etc. Or we were negatively associated with the parent company and the NHS and big institutions, etc., etc. So the first 2-3 years and so on were really grim about whether we'd even survive and when would we even be able to pay the staff each month. If I fast forward to now, you know, and obviously in 2020, we've more than doubled in size. You know, we've now gone to over £21 million from 9 million. We've got best part of 1,000 staff. We support people now across the whole of the North, where it was just a very local area to start off with. We've won some local, regional, national awards. This year we won Best Employer for over 250 staff with Skills for Care. We won that in 2015 and 16. In 2019, we won Social Enterprise Award for Employee Engagement. And this year we got from CQC, which is our regulator, we got Outstanding, which only 4% of social care organisations get. So that was a really big deal to us. But most importantly, and why we're all here, we're making a difference to people's lives. You know, if I can give you a quick example, one of the people we support, she'd spent many, many years in long-term institutions. She was in the top 5% for behaviours of assaulting people, for being put in seclusion. People told her she wouldn't last 5 minutes in the community. If we fast forward 5 years, that individual is amazing. She's gone back to college, she's done a basic English and maths. In pre-COVID time, she volunteers in the community, and she's one of our experts by experience who goes out and teaches in college and university about what it's like to have a learning disability. And she's a totally amazing human being who just needed the right values-based support to succeed and to flourish. So what's made the difference? Well, I could bore you all to tears and spend 2 hours telling you, and I'm sure Niall wouldn't be very happy with me if I did that. So I'm just going to say there's some key ingredients which I haven't got time to go through, such as getting your business strategy right, redesigning things in new innovative ways, having positive and visible leadership. But the one I'm going to focus on in the remaining few minutes I've got is about being values-based. I had a moment early doors where I thought, do you know what? We have 5 core values: putting people first, going the extra mile, being creative, being adaptable, being transparent. If you think about them 5 values, if I and if my teams and all our teams, if we live them values out at all levels consistently, even the vast majority of time, because let's face it, none of us are saints, if we achieve that even 80% of the time, how could we not make a difference to people's lives, both the people we support and each other's lives? So we did tons of work early on with all the people we support, families, stakeholders, commissioners, about what were our values and what values were going to make a difference to people's lives. And once we'd identified those values, we did more work. And the feedback we got from the workshops was, make the values real and hold people to account if they don't live them out. So then we did work on each of the values. What does it look like in practice and what doesn't it look like? And we call that the Future Directions Way. We then used that framework and we based our recruitment around it, our appraisals around it, our objectives, our celebrations, our social media, everything we do, we use our values as a compass. And our business strategy wrote itself, because when you're clear about your values and what values you need to make a difference, then your business strategy is about how do I put those values into action to have the greatest impact on people's lives. So in conclusion, you know, my kind of top tips for people who are tuning in this today because they want to set up a business and they want a business that makes a difference. Work out where in the world do you want to make that difference? And then what values do you need to live out and to the people that you in your teams need to live out to make that difference? And then use that to focus everything you do, because the values work is never done. It's like painting the 4th bridge. Base your recruitment around it, base your business strategy around it, base everything you do. And the more you live out the values, the greater impact you'll have in the world. And if I can finish with a quote, it's one of my favourite all-time quotes, so please indulge me. Your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And if you put that into action, your destiny through living out your values will be to make a true impact in the world and to really make a difference to people's lives. So I hope that was helpful and useful.
That was great, Paula. Thank you very much for that. I don't think you attributed that quote to anyone. Who was that? Who was that quote?
That's from Gandhi.
That's from Gandhi. Okay, that's a pretty good guy to be getting quotes from, I think, isn't it? You whizzed through that pretty quickly, and I think I've got. I was expecting 10 minutes, so just I'm going to take the liberty of asking you a couple of questions. I mean, you mentioned in the early days where you came out of the NHS with a lot of debt, but I mean, that to me would seem fairly intimidating. How confident were you that you could turn that around? Did you have like a time scale for turning that around?
Well, we had to pay the loan back in 3 years, so there was no leeway. We knew we had to get it back. And I think the thing is, I was confident that I really believed that what we were setting out to achieve and the difference we wanted to make, we could do it. And for me, that's what going back to the light bulb moment with the values. I really believe that by living out the values and becoming a values-based organisation, how could you not be successful? Because if we are living those values out, we will be doing the right things in the right ways for the right reasons. Therefore, the support we give will be amazing. People will want that support. They'll want to engage with us. Employees will want to come and work for us because they'll want to be part of something that's making a difference. Commissioners will want to buy us because they will see that we're doing our best to live those values out and to do it. So therefore, I was really confident that this was the key to success. And consequently, we've grown and we've managed to clear the debt, but that is a consequence of being good at what we do, which is a consequence of living out our values and making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you. The other thing I think that we should just clarify is it sounds like you were a spin out. Would that be right to call you a spin out?
Correct.
And this is a sort of a kind of subgenre of social enterprises for people sort of new to it. Quite a lot of social enterprises spin out of bigger organisations, councils, I think sometimes, and the NHS. But just briefly, because I want to introduce Niall really quickly, why did you feel like you could do the work that you do better outside of the NHS than you could do in it?
Okay. Although, the NHS, we all support it and love it, it is a great big machine with lots of red tape and lots of systems and so forth. And I think being a social enterprise outside the NHS, it gave us a lot more freedom and ability to be flexible and innovative and do things in a different way that didn't need to go through 15 committees.
Okay. All right, sure. All right, thank you, Paula. And if you've got questions for Paula, please do ask them, and we'll get to those after we hear from Niall, who is the founder and CEO of the Blair Project, which intriguingly uses karting, go-karting that is, to get young people interested in STEM careers. So Niall, please explain all.
Hi, everybody, and thank you guys for inviting me to talk today. As I said, my name is Niall Henry. I'm the founder and CEO of the Blair Project. I'm also an advisor to the Metro Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, as part of the Greater Manchester Social Enterprise Advisory Group. I'm a youth board member for the Manchester Climate Change Agency. And I think the biggest important fact about me is that I'm a massive tech nerd. But we're here today to talk about my predominant business, the Blair Project. So it's a vocational and technical training provider that uses the excitement and exhilaration of electric motorsport to inspire and infuse disadvantaged young people to pursue rewarding careers in the digital, tech, and engineering sectors. And the young people that we work with are young people who have low awareness of those careers. And we're all about creating the diverse workforce of the future. And how we do that is what we use motorsport as a tool by making STEM learning fun. So through our innovative STEM programs like Proto EV, we get teams to convert used petrol go-karts into fully electric e-karts that they get to test and race to see which is the fastest, but also which is the most energy efficient. And Proto EV taps into the climate change activisms of young people by providing them with hands-on experience of working with green technologies. And with the Blair Project, we've always been an innovative company, whether we're doing first of their kind, building electric go-karts or even building 3D printed go-karts. We were recently awarded in August of this year, £4 million from central government for our Manchester Innovation Activities Hub, otherwise known as MIA. And that will be an innovation and skills training centre that will rapidly upskill, reskill and retrain Manchester residents in what's called Industry 4.0 technical skills. So that's anything like low carbon and battery propulsion technologies, advanced manufacturing, which is essentially 3D printing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence and virtual reality, just to name a few. And those residents will be trained in those technologies and then progressed into hard to fill occupations within Manchester Science Park. And this all came as a result of, we were commissioned to do a feasibility study for this Innovation and Skills Training Centre, which allowed us to fly out to New York in February to learn best practices from organizations out there, which we could bring back and put into this report. And it was just before, we actually flew out just before COVID hit. So it was a blessing in that regard. And we used this time from the lockdown to really finalize the report. And we were able to submit it to central government to get this funding, which MIA will be launched in January of 2021. But to take it all back to the very beginning and how I started the Blair Project, I started it when I was 18. I'd just come back from a gap year of traveling, or a gap few months of traveling, and I came back and I decided I really wanted to set up my own business, and I wanted to be my own boss. But I just needed to come up, what shall I set my business around? And for example, my young brother, who's the inspiration behind the name, the Blair Project, I decided, what if I could try and help not just his dream come true, but other kids in the same situation. So the Blair Project's core mission at the start was to make motorsport more diverse, affordable, accessible, and inclusive. So regardless of your race, gender, or background, anybody could take part. And again, the Blair Project is named after my younger brother, and Blair was a former kart racer. And motorsport is one of those sports where it doesn't matter how talented you are, if you've not got the financial backing behind you, you're never really going to be able to reach the top. So for example, families would be spending around £35,000 a year for their son and daughter to race competitively at a karting level. To move up to the next level, which is like your single-seater Formula One style cars, but the entry level, you'd be looking to spend around about £150,000 a year. And then to get to the level just below Formula One, which is Formula 2, you need to bring in £2 million a year. And as you can imagine, that is just absolutely ludicrous. Who has £2 million just to flog like that? So that was my core aim. Why can't we bring down the cost and make more sustainable, so actual talent can actually have a career in the sport? And our first challenges was, right, how can we bring down the cost? So we saw loads of articles and YouTube videos around these new technologies called 3D printing and computer-aided design. And we thought, wouldn't it be a great idea if we could build our own 3D printed go-kart, and we'd use this software called computer-aided design to design the bodywork of the go-kart, 3D print it, and apply it onto an existing used petrol go-kart, petrol chassis. And that's what we did. And we built the world's first 3D printed go-kart, and we decided, wouldn't it be great if the skills that we just learned, we could take that into schools and teach young people how to design, build, test, and race their own 3D printed go-karts. And we called this program ProtoGP, and we piloted it in 2016. And on the very first, and that was with schools and youth clubs in Wigan and Bolton. And on the very first test session of ProtoGP, we were very fortunate enough to have His Royal Highness Prince Harry, or he's no longer His Royal Highness, but Prince Harry come down to our very first test session, which not only gave us national exposure, but also gave us international exposure, which is absolutely fantastic. We were being featured in Hello magazine in Canada and being contacted by universities in America. And we ran that program for 2 years, so in 2016 and 2017. And then we decided, right, well, wouldn't it be great if we could be even more innovative with our STEM challenge and take it up to the next level? And then that's where the idea of Proto EV came into play. So we thought, our existing petrol go-karts, let's convert them into EVs. And we piloted that program in 2018, again in Wigan and Bolton, but working with a bigger cohort. And that was a first of its kind in the UK. Nobody had done anything around what we were doing, converting petrol into electric. And it was a huge success. And then in 2020, we were due to roll out our Proto EV STEM Challenge nationally, working with schools and youth clubs across Wigan, Bolton, Manchester, London, Oxford, and Birmingham, because we had formed academic partnerships with Manchester Metropolitan University, as well as Oxford Brookes University, who are number one motorsport university in terms of Formula student. But unfortunately, coronavirus happened, so that put a halt in our plans. But we are gearing up to roll out Proto EV nationally next year, because due to obviously COVID and lockdown restrictions, education and training is not prohibited, so we can actually run our programs next year. But during that time, like I said, when lockdown first came into place and we couldn't actually run our programs, part of that becoming innovative was coming up with new ideas, and the Manchester Innovation Activities Hub was that new idea and allowed us to be a lot more commercial and think for the longevity of our business, because we knew that we had to adapt our business or we would die. And that's what we decided to do. And so that's been our core mission at the Blair Project, is to try and give opportunities to predominantly young people who would never normally get these opportunities, and progress them into very rewarding careers within engineering, digital, or tech. And by doing our Pro to Be program, we're actually progressing to say, you know what, after you've done this program, after you finish school, you can either go down to college and study engineering, digital, or tech, or you can do an apprenticeship, or eventually you could even come into the MIA Centre and be trained up rapidly and then progressed into jobs. So that's all our core mission. And what I would always tell people is, if you're looking to set up a social enterprise, there's a couple of things you need to keep in the game and be successful. One, you have to be passionate about what you do. The passion's always got to be there, and you've got to be innovative. You've got to come up with new ideas and new problems that you can solve for people. You definitely got to be persistent and resilient, because throughout your entrepreneurial journey, you'll come through lots of highs and you'll come through a lot of lows. And it's at those lows that you need to not give up. And one of the things we've learned is not taking no for an answer. So when people are saying, "Oh no, we're not going to be able to fund your program," or we can't do this at this moment, it's saying, "No, I'm not waiting. I'm not going to wait for you guys. I'm just going to go out there and take action myself and let them chase you." And they end up chasing you and just say, "Oh, right, we want to work you." And you've got to stay ahead of all the market trends. So keep up to date with what's going on in the news and study those trends and see how that can adapt in your business. For example, one of the things we're doing is obviously what we're doing around electric vehicles and our STEM challenge. The news came out yesterday that Boris Johnson has decided to bring down his low carbon targets from 2040 to 2030. And we've always been ahead of the curve, but now we're using that to further ahead our plans and see how we can maneuver and take advantage of that market. So you've got to be keeping up to date with what's going on. Those are the things I would say. And then the last thing I would say, it's all about collaboration. So don't get yourself out there and collaborate with other people. So when I need something or I've got an idea, I'll always speak to, whether it's people on LinkedIn or through my network, and think, "I've got this idea. What do you think about this?" And 9 times out of 10, people are just more willing to help you. And our motto in the Blair Project, just because I know we have to wrap up, is no one person can create success on their own. It takes a winning team and helping hands. And that's that whole emphasis around collaboration and just making sure, you know what, you partnering up with other people and you're hitting those targets. So I'll end there for now, and I'll take any questions in the Q&A.
Mute myself. Sorry. Thank you, Niall. Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I think that last thing you said also sort of, basically has some resonance with the values that Paula was talking about. But I just want to be clear about the reason for you doing this. And you spoke about both diversity and disadvantage. So what's the problem at the moment? Why are the people that you work with not seeing opportunities in the kind of careers you're signposting to?
I think one of the biggest problems is that I did a talk about 2 months ago to engineering professionals, and the problem isn't so much the young people, let's say people of color or females, aren't taking these options at a university or college level. It's that they're not being given those opportunities, and it's needed organizations like us to talk to those engineering companies and say, basically, look around your office, spot who's missing. And do you know what? The key benefits of having a more diverse workforce is that people bring different ideas and are quite creative in different aspects. So you bring in different ideas, you're going to increase your productivity in your business, which will generate even more wealth and generate more revenue for your organization. So, for example, a stat I found was that there are about 29% of engineering professionals who are graduating who are from a Black, Asian, minority ethnic background. But unfortunately, the sector only makes 9%. 9% of those BAME engineering graduates are actually getting the work. So part of what we're doing is trying to encourage the next generation to actually study engineering, because one of the other things as well is that we're not having enough young people in the UK studying engineering and taking up those jobs. So we're having to hire from Poland or India and China. But what we're also saying is that these employers need to actually start taking on our own and start investing in our youth. So by partnering up with programs like Proto EV, and either whether it's funding a team to take part or donating some of their equipment, let's start opening young people's eyes to say, right, this is an opportunity. Because quite frankly, some of the young people that we work with don't even have the awareness of those careers. So we're all about opening their eyes, but partnering up with employers.
Yeah. Well, I think you know, I went to school a long time ago now, but I mean, there was no connection, I think, between maybe some of the science subjects I was doing and something that would be as exciting and sexy as kind of go-karting, really. So I think maybe, you know, maybe there's a thing in the perception as well of where science careers can lead you, that young people do need to see that things can be exciting, you know. So I wanted to ask both of you, I mean, it's really great because we've got two really contrasting organizations here. I mean, Paula, you know, you said you've got, is it 1,000 staff now, I think? And Niall, how many people have you got within your organization?
So we've got about 5 people at the minute.
Yeah, so we've got like what I would call quite a, you know, big mature social enterprise and an SME effectively with you now. But I wanted to ask you both, what were the biggest barriers to you getting started in your business? I mean, was it, you know, the bureaucracy around setting up? Was it the funding? Can you speak a bit about how you took that first step and what you did then when you took that first step? Paula, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Well, I think for us, because again, we're slightly different because we were a spin out. It was navigating all the red tape and all the different governance hurdles to enable it, you know, to happen. And obviously, as I already pointed out, it was also the fact that we had a loaded dice in terms of we already had quite a few obstacles that we immediately inherited, like loss-making contracts, like contracts that didn't stack up in the sector. As I said before, the problem of either being negatively associated with where you've spun out of, or being completely unknown. And when you go for tender work, they want 3 years of accounts, and you don't have 3 years accounts. You know, so we had a lot to do in terms of really redesigning. Going back to what Niall said before, totally agree. You've got to have passion. You've got to keep going. You've got to believe that you'll get over those obstacles and know that you will. And you've got to really believe in what you're doing and bounce back and keep going, and you'll then see it turn around.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. And then Niall?
Paula said a lot of the things as I was going to say, but one of the things we learned early on is not to be so reliant on grant funding, because sometimes the grant funding doesn't actually cover you for your time. It covers you for your project, but then sometimes some funds won't even cover you for the work that you're putting on the project. And you definitely got to be, for us, we decided in 2018 that we weren't going to take any more grant funding, and we were going to be solely just commercial. And that turned out better in our favor, because we weren't restricted, because sometimes these funds restrict you on what you can and can't do. So definitely one piece of advice I would say is be more commercial and don't just focus on one avenue. So you could still apply for grants, but have different avenues of how you can make money. I was going to say something else. What was the? Oh gosh.
Maybe while you're thinking about that, Niall, I saw Paula nodding along to be more commercial. So
totally, a lot of social enterprise as well. It's similar point to what Niall is. Sometimes they focus on only having 1 or 2 contracts with 1 or 2 people. And one of the things we did early doors as part of our business strategy was we made a very conscious and deliberate decision to diversify our number of contracts with the number of people, authorities that we work with, and also different types of contracts. And we stopped chasing tenders, which is a soulless, destroying thing where you constantly rebid the work every 3 years and someone undercut you by 5p. And we actually designed new solutions that we took to commissioners and we took to people and said, why don't you buy this and why don't you do this? Let's do it differently. And so I think that goes back to an earlier point that Niall says, you know, don't wait. Sometimes you almost have to take the solution and enable people to see it and work together to make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and that was the one point I was going to make is, when you're starting up a social enterprise, make sure you do, I would say, keep a part-time job when you first set it up, because it can be, the mistake I made is that I just set up a social enterprise and I didn't turn over any revenue for the first 18 months. And it was a real learning curve, because you're thinking, oh, I'm applying for these grants and, you know, I'm going to be successful and I'm going to be able to run my projects. And then sometimes you would get hit back. And then you're just constantly thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to do? Should I give up or should I not? And then I ended up getting a part-time job, which allowed me to bring money into the business that I could actually still work on my social enterprise. And then it was after about 18 months that we were able to generate revenue. And then I was able to get to a point where I could leave my part-time job and go and work fully in the business. So that's definitely one key advice that I would give to myself when I first started up, but to give to you guys as well, is make sure you still have a source of income to come in to help so that you can carry on working in your social enterprise.
Yeah, I think that's quite common for people to have a sort of side hustle when they start their social enterprise. But I mean, how easy was it for you to balance a job and run the social enterprise? Did it feel like you were doing 60-hour weeks, Niall, or?
Oh, it was hectic. Pretty much had no social life. Just constantly working. But you know what? It was a blessing as well, because I learned so much, because I was working in a corporate environment. So it helped. The things that I learned in that part-time job helped me in my business. How to about governance and policies and management as well. Although I wasn't a manager there, but I learned a lot of things from management while I was there. So definitely.
And Paula, I imagine the same for you when you come out of, because you had quite senior roles in the NHS before you started Future Directions. But I mean, did you find yourself, you know, working twice as hard when you first came out and you were trying to establish Future Directions as a going concern?
Yeah, I mean, it was scary and exciting. It still is in that, because I had to take a pay cut. I left all the security in the NHS. You have quite a lot of security in terms of job. I had this responsibility that suddenly, if we didn't make it work, I had hundreds of people's mortgages, on the line and so forth and that. So I think I owned it in a way. I think when you have a social enterprise, I'm sure Niall will probably agree with this, you own it and you feel far more passionately about it than you ever can if you're part of a big machine like the NHS, because it's your baby, you've set it up, you need it to succeed, you've got people's livelihoods depending on it. And I guess that's at times that can be a burden, but it's also the thing that makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning, because you've got the freedom to be able to work with yourself and collaborate with other people, to have the freedom to make a difference and to make things happen. And it was the best move I ever did. It's been exciting, it's been scary, but honestly, I've earned less money, but I've never been happier. It's brilliant.
Okay, well, what price happiness, I guess. You've both mentioned the word governance, and I mean, I am in my mid-40s. I was unaware of what governance was until a few years ago. So, I mean, for the people watching this, I think of it as a board, but I mean, is that right? And if so, can you explain a bit more about governance, the two of you? Don't know who would like to go first. Paula, do you want to go first? We'll do ladies first.
Okay. I think governance is really, for me, it's the safety net of checking everything is how it should be, because we have a responsibility to the people that we're serving and the money that we're using for doing good, and we want to leave a legacy that does make that difference. So for me, the board is part of the governance, as are the structures around it. It's all the structures and the safeguarding that ensures that we are doing what we said we do in a right and honourable way and in line with the mission and the objectives of the business.
Okay, and now
Paula said a lot of the good. Making sure you've got your, I say, all your policies and procedures in place, and let's say safeguarding, just making sure that you're following the rules and the criteria. Because that is important, especially for when you're applying for bids or whatever. You've got to have those policies and procedures in place, or else they won't grant you those opportunities. And it's just making sure that you're keeping up to date with those things as well, because so many things just get outdated. It's even like things like data GDPR. You constantly having to review that and just making sure that you know what, you're handling people's data well, but then you also you're just making sure you're hitting those targets and make sure everything's in place.
So it's sort of checks and balances, but it's also someone to kind of, remind you that you need to go on with something if you haven't done it.
Yeah.
And how do you think you need a board from the start, or is it something you can develop as you're starting up? And if so, where do you find those people?
For me, I definitely feel it's important if you can get a board from the start, because you know what, you bring in more people to the table who can give you different ideas and give their experience, because that's definitely helped me. I'm 25, so I'm still learning every day, but it's nice to have people, other people who have experienced and been in the game for quite a long time, and they're helping me and giving me advice and on some of the mistakes that they've made in the past, and even some of their successes that I can emulate in my business. So I think it's always good to have a difference of opinion.
Okay, Paula?
No, I would totally agree. We had a board from the start. I think a very common description of a board is a critical friend. So you, like as Niall say, you're drawing on all those experiences. You join together by your common purpose and your common values of what you're trying to achieve, and then you have people who've got great and different life experiences, different skill sets that can just help go, have you thought about it like this way? And with the governance, with the checks and balances, just checking, are we on course? Are we, we're not going off course and doing something completely different and random that isn't really about achieving and making the difference that we set out to do, and bringing that extra lot of skills and expertise. And I think the, a great board is part of making a great organisation.
Okay, and how about how about finding those people? Where do you find those people?
So I was going to answer that question.
Yeah.
So for me, what's been a key thing in any business is, I'd definitely say, networking, getting yourself out there, telling people about your organization, and figuring out, example, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. So if your strength is sales or management, and you've got a good gab, but you might be lacking at maybe the commercial acumen or a strategy or whatever, go and find people who you think you admire and think, right, his skill or her skill would be really great on as a board of directors, or even as an advisory panel. You find even at an advisory level, people are more than happy to give their time if you build up those relationships and those connections. So for me, when I was starting out, obviously LinkedIn was a great tool, and before COVID you had like obviously networking events and things like Meetup, where you can, for example, you can meet up other social entrepreneurs or other innovators within your city, so Manchester. So I recruited people just based on who I knew through going to networking and building relationships with. So I definitely say, look around your networks and see who you think would be a real impact in your business, and then invite them to come on board. And you know what, maybe they say no, but I mean, most times people will want to see you succeed, so they will join on board.
Okay. And Paula, where did you find your board from?
Similar to what Niall said, if you're clear about what you're trying to do and where you're making your difference and what values you are, as Niall said, there's lots of free tools out there as well, about where you can do like a board skill checklist and look at where you particularly do want to focus in on. So, we want somebody who shares our values, who wants to make a difference to people's lives with mental health and LD, but we might know it would be really good to have somebody who's got in-depth finance skills, etc. and stuff. So then we use that across the networks and in advertising to go, you must have these values, you must do X, Y, and Z, but we're particularly looking for this skill set, and then recruit accordingly.
Okay. All right.
One more thing I would definitely say that would be really beneficial on your journey is to get yourself a mentor as well. They will help you grow your business. Will not obviously do it for you, but will give you avenues and direction and give their experience, so that they can help you develop as a leader in your own social enterprise or business.
Thank you for that. Now it's a perfect segue for me to say, if you are looking for a mentor, obviously have a look at expertimpact.com. But I also wanted to ask both of you, I mean, when you were starting out, there were you need help, and there are organizations that can give you help. So, I mean, can you name check a couple of organizations that people should look at if they are thinking of starting a social enterprise?
So for me, when I was starting out, I used the Business Growth Hub service. They have a mentoring, but also a startup accelerator where they teach you how to set up your own business. So I used that in the early stages, but I also had my mum who works in the business as well. So her background was as a business and business coach and mentor coach. So she was able to help me set up my business. But using services like the Growth Hub is quite good as well.
Where do people access the Growth Hub now?
Oh, I think but I don't know the website, but if you just type in Business Growth Hub startup service on Google.
That's a national thing, is it?
No, I think it's just for Manchester.
Okay, fine.
National, yeah, I don't have a link for that, but
okay, no worries. People can Google. Yeah, they can Google. And Paula, organisations you think are worth checking out when you're starting up?
Well, Google was our friend. we checked out, we Googled similar social enterprises. We found local social enterprise networks. There was one in the Northwest that was called Northern Soul. So we just, we did some research on who was out there who'd had similar experiences. We made connections, and then, we developed our own networks, and it was mutually supportive.
Okay, fab. I've got one final question because we've just got about 90 seconds left. So to both of you, what is the best thing about running a social enterprise?
One word?
As many as you like. Well, we've got 90 seconds, so not too many words.
Freedom.
Freedom, that's interesting. Why freedom?
Because as your own boss, you've got the freedom to go in any direction that you want, and you're not confined to what other people think. So, for example, obviously when I was working in retail, you were always having to follow certain rules, and if you wanted to be different and innovative, you couldn't. You were restricted from being innovative. Whereas when you're your own boss, you've got the freedom to do that, and the freedom to go out there and collaborate with different people. And I can honestly say, like Paula said, there's nothing like being your own boss. And yeah, I could never go back to working for somebody else. So okay. Yeah, freedom.
Okay. And Paula, best thing about running a social enterprise?
I genuinely know that we are making a difference to people's lives. And if heaven forbid, my number was up tomorrow, I know that to certain people's lives, because we existed and because we do exist, it's made a massive difference. And that's amazing. And how lucky am I and the people who get to do that?
Yeah, I think that's probably I've heard lots of social entrepreneurs say that, the gratification that you get from helping other people. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm afraid that is all we've got time for. That has sped by that 45 minutes. So I'd like to say thank you to both Paula and Niles. Thank you to the Business and Intellectual Property Centre in Manchester. Do check them out by Googling. If you'd like to know more about the Human Lending Library, which is the organisation I work for, you can go to expertimpact.com, or you can Google Human Lending Library. I hope you enjoy the rest of today. There's lots of great stuff that the British Library are putting out today on Startup Day. But for now, it is goodbye from us.